about a year after proclaiming he was not guilty of judicial corruption, Angus McGinty today changed his plea to guilty.
Corruption within the judiciary is a great threat to the course of justice and the rule of law.
Somebody out there is going to be unhappy. I don't know what the verdict is.
It is more shocking when these evil acts are perpetrated by top-level officials to whom citizens hold the highest form of esteem and confidence.
10 judges have been convicted, 1 was acquitted, and 4 are awaiting trial.
Luckily, the system has stepped on its brakes by fishing out these corrupt judges and making them face the consequences of their actions. This significant occurrence is a clear reminder that no one is above the law, regardless of their status and level in society. The swift action carried out against these judges not only proves that the law is the final authority, but simultaneously reaffirms the statement that the law is the last resort for the common man. In this video, we will unravel 12 corrupt judges caught and jailed. Number 12. Meng Xiang. Meng Xiang, which means the land of dreams, indeed had dreams, one that got him wearing an orange jumpsuit behind bars. Judge Meng Xiang was a former director of the Supreme People's Court's Enforcement Bureau and a member of its trial committee. He had worked in the country's justice system for more than 3 decades, starting as a clerk in a local district court in Beijing. As he rose through the ranks, he held various leadership positions in the judicial system, including the High People's Court in Beijing. He was made director of the Enforcement Bureau in 2016, a role that meant he was responsible for helping to maintain the smooth operation of the justice system. Sadly, he did the opposite of what was expected of his office. Meng had used his status and power to accept bribes in exchange for helping others with matters such as court rulings and law enforcement, securing construction contracts for firms, and influencing cadre selection. The Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post reported on 15 March 2023. Meng Xiang, a former director of the court's Enforcement Bureau, admitted to taking the equivalent of US $3.3 million in bribes over almost 20 years. He was caught as part of a graft-busting campaign targeting the judicial system and law enforcement. He was jailed for 12 years, and all his illegal earnings were confiscated, and any interest accrued will be handed over to the National Treasury. Meng had been given a lighter sentence because he had expressed remorse and confessed to bribery offenses the authorities had not previously known about. The impact of Meng's crimes left the legal system in a state of shock. Proper measures have, however, been put in place to defeat these unlawful activities before it occurs. According to Zhou Qiang, a former Chief Justice, 61 officials from the Supreme Court, which comprises hundreds of judges and administrative officials, had been placed under investigation and punished over the past 5 years. He said the anti-corruption campaign targeting the legal sector would help improve the integrity of the judicial system. Number 11. Operation Greylord. Operation Greylord was one of the most important cases of a public corruption investigation in the United States. Named after the cut wigs worn by British judges, Operation Greylord rooted out corruption in the Cook County, Illinois court. The 3-year and 8-month operations took place in the 70s, and in the end, through undercover operations that used honest and very courageous judges and lawyers posing as crooked ones, and with the strong assistance of the Cook County Court and local police, 92 officials were indicted, including 17 judges, 48 lawyers, 8 policemen, 10 deputy sheriffs, 8 court officials, and 1 state legislator. Nearly all were convicted, most of them pleading guilty. It was an important first step to cleaning up the administration of justice in Cook County, which was the whole point of the operation. The success of the investigation is attributed to the fact that it was a typical sting operation in which the Federal Bureau of Investigation fabricated cases, tape-recorded conversations, tapped telephones, and planted a bug in the chambers of at least one judge. Abuse of public trust cannot and must not be tolerated, which is why the Federal Bureau investigation has the ticket on investigations of public corruption as a top priority. Historically, of course, these cases were considered local matters. A county court clerk taking bribes, let the county handle it. But in the 1970s, state and local officials asked for help. They didn't have the resources to handle such intense cases, and they valued the authority and credibility that outside investigators brought to the table. By 1976, the Department of Justice had created a public integrity section, and the Federal Bureau Investigation was tasked with the investigations, focusing on major, systemic corruption in the body politic. An unknown author said one important lesson to be derived from Greylord: never say, "It can't happen here," because it definitely will. Number 10. Michael Magio. Michael Magio was popular for the audacity and boldness he displayed while carrying out his shady activities with no feelings of guilt or shame. Michael Magio was born in 1961, the oldest of 4 children of Henry Anthony Magio, who was a psychiatrist and medical officer in the United States Army, and Bobby Paget Magio. Born in southern Louisiana, he spent his early childhood there and in Texas before the family settled in southern Mississippi after his father opened a psychiatry practice in Gulfport, Mississippi. Magio graduated from St. Stanislaus High School in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi in 1979. He then attended Millsaps College and graduated in 1983 with majors in history and political science. He attended the University of Mississippi for his first 2 years of law school before transferring to the University of Arkansas at Little Rock William H. Bowen School of Law to complete his studies, graduating in 1989. Magio served as a deputy prosecutor, a small claims judge, and a special municipal judge. In 1998, Magio lost an election for Conway City Council, and in 2008, Governor Mike Huckabee appointed Magio as circuit judge for the 20th Judicial District, which started in January 2000. He was re-elected twice, remaining in that seat until his removal on September 11, 2014. Now, here is where the story starts. Magio presided over a Faulkner County jury trial in which the family of Martha Bull sued Greenbrier Nursing and Rehabilitation Center for negligently causing Bull's death in 2008. Bull entered the nursing home for what was supposed to be a 30-day rehabilitation after suffering a mild stroke, but she died less than 2 weeks later. Despite her screams of pain, staff at the facility did not take her to a hospital. On May 16, 2013, the jury returned a $5.2 million judgment in favor of Bull. The following month, Magio announced he was running for District 2, a post he knew he wasn't qualified for. On July 8, 2013, Magio held a hearing on the nursing home's motion for a reduced judgment. That same day, the office of Michael Morton, the owner of a large chain of nursing homes, including Greenbrier, made out checks for $30,000 to political action committees controlled by Gilbert Baker of Conway, a lobbyist, former Republican state senator, former state Republican Party chairman, and a faculty member at the University of Central Arkansas. Baker intended to use it to contribute to Magio's Court of Appeals campaign. On July 9, 2013, Magio received $24,000 in campaign donations and during the hearing reduced the judgment against the nursing home in the Bull case from $5.2 million to $1 million. In March 2014, Magio withdrew from the Court of Appeals race after Matt Campbell of the Blue Hog Report blog published a story accusing him of posting online about a sealed case in his court that involved the closed adoption of a child by actress Charlize Theron. Magio admitted to making the posts at issue on Tiger Droppings, a website devoted to Louisiana State University football, with the profile name Go Judge just days later, including the posts about Theron's adoption, as well as several others using racist and explicit language. Magio pleaded guilty to bribery concerning federal program funds before United States District Judge Brian Miller on December 9, 2015, and was sentenced on March 24, 2016 to 10 years in federal prison. Number 9. Bob Harp. Once a magistrate, now a prisoner. This is how Bob Harp was addressed after being sentenced to 12 months in prison for harassment and bullying amongst other offenses. A former South Australian magistrate will spend a year behind bars after he pressured a court clerk and a senior police officer, who was also his partner, into taking his demerit points. Bob Harp also admitted to corrupt involvement in a case involving a lawyer, who was also his close friend. He and the 3 women were all sentenced in the district court on December 2020. Judge Paul Slattery, the presiding judge, said Harp bullied or pressured 3 female co-accused. 2 of them were placed on good behavior bonds and another was fined. Harp's lewd and inappropriate comments towards his clerk Melanie Jane Freeman, so that she would take the rap for his speeding fine, had sensual overtones and were particularly egregious. Harp pressured Freeman and his girlfriend, former police prosecutor Abigail Rebecca Folks, to hand over their driver's license details, so they took demerit points for him after he racked up 2 speeding fines in his government-issued car. He did so to avoid a license disqualification. The presiding judge, Paul Slattery, after listening to Freeman, accepted that she was bullied, isolated, and groomed to hand over her license details to her boss, who had considerable power over her. The mother of 3 was assigned to Harp at the Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in February 2019 and became dependent on him because she was resented by other staff. In a separate incident, Harp advised probate lawyer Catherine Jane Moyse, his former girlfriend, about how to prepare an appeal before insisting he preside over the same case, creating a potential conflict of interest. In sentencing, the judge considered Harp's long-standing career as a magistrate, charity work with Inclusion Sport SA, and his relationship with his 28-year-old, and sentenced to 12 months behind bars with no parole. His co-accused lawyer, Catherine Jane Moyse, had no conviction recorded and was fined $600. Court clerk Melanie Jane Freeman also avoided a conviction but was placed on a 12-month good behavior bond. Police prosecutor Abigail Rebecca Folks, who is also Harp's partner, had a conviction recorded and was also placed on a 12-month bond. The 4 were charged earlier this year following an investigation by the state's independent commissioner against corruption. Number 8. Gerald P Garson. Divorce is often hard, but it becomes even harder when a judge has been bribed to manipulate the proceeding of the case. The unraveling of Gerald's case and the sentencing that proceeded afterward have left several divorce lawyers and judges quaking in fear, especially those with secret deeds behind closed doors. The Garson case is rooted in a 3-year relationship between a judge assigned to a matrimonial court in Brooklyn and a matrimonial lawyer. In his roughly 5 years on the bench in Brooklyn, Mr. Garson handled nearly 1,100 matrimony cases, making decisions on child custody and financial matters. In finding him guilty, the jury endorsed the prosecution theory that he had an agreement with a divorce lawyer to take cash, dinners, and cigars in exchange for courtroom assignments and favored treatment. Mr. Garson was first charged in 23, along with the divorce lawyer, Paul Cimino Sky, as well as one of his clients, a court officer, a former clerk, and a man described as a fixer. All 6 were charged with felonies. The case immediately reverberated throughout Brooklyn, from playpens and dinner tables to the upper echelons of politics. Divorce cases were reopened. Judges feared that their offices were wired for surveillance. The system of nominating judges was ruled unconstitutional. The sentencing of Garson and his cohorts made it clear that no one is above the long hand of the law. Number 7. Thomas J. Spargo. Thomas Spargo is arguably one of the most corrupt judges New York has had. The former Chief Justice was convicted of attempted extortion and soliciting a bribe from attorneys with cases before him. A federal grand jury in Albany, New York, convicted the 66-year-old Thursday after a 3-day trial. In November 2003, Spargo demanded $10,000 from an attorney with cases pending before him in Ulster County, New York, where Spargo was serving as a state Supreme Court justice. When the attorney declined, Spargo increased the pressure, telling the attorney that if he didn't pay up, cases handled by his firm and his divorce would be in jeopardy. Spargo was removed from the bench in 2012 when the solicitation allegations surfaced. He was ultimately banned from judicial office in the United States. Spargo faces up to 10 years in prison on the solicitation bribe and another 20 years on the extortion conviction. He also faces a maximum fine of $250,000 for each count. Sentencing was done in December 2003. Just like York Assistant Attorney General Lanny Brewer said in a statement, "It is a sad day indeed when a judge breaks the laws that he is sworn to enforce." Number 6. Thomas J. Maloney. Do you remember the operation of Greylord that resulted in the convictions of 15 judges in the 1980s? Thomas J. Maloney was the first Cook County judge to be convicted of rigging murder cases for money. Maloney had a rather funny story. He was a former boxer who moved up to be a lawyer and then a judge. Just when it looked like his story was a grass-to-grace one, he moved from being a judge to a criminal locked up behind bars. The former boxer, who gained a tough law and order reputation in 13 years as a Cook County judge, was convicted on the 16th April 1993 of taking thousands of dollars in bribes to fix 3 separate murder trials and a 4th felony case. Interim United States Attorney Michael Shepard said during proceedings that this case showed that in Judge Maloney's courtroom, for the right price, you could get away with murder. Maloney's conviction led Barry Miller, president of the Council of Lawyers, to renew a call to replace the political election of judges with merit selection. While emphasizing that most judges are honest, Miller said, "We have a unique system of corruption that is institutionalized." Prosecutor Mendel Off added that in a city where corruption has sadly been commonplace, Maloney rewrote the meaning of corruption. If this conviction doesn't send a message to the judges of Cook County that we will ruthlessly prosecute them for corruption, then they're lost. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Today's conversation is on corrupt judges caught and jailed for lifetime. Let's take a moment to stare at the picture on the screen. You can almost feel the emotions exuding from the just convicted criminal and his lover. Can you imagine the thoughts going through their minds as they make out intensely for what looks like it would be the last in a very long time? What would have led a gentle and meek-looking young judge to this point, where he is about to be locked in the cold walls of a prison cell? What could be the rationale behind the hideous crime he committed? Could this be the last time his loved ones would see him again? What do you think about this emotion-evoking picture? Share your thoughts in the comments section below and let's discuss. Number 5. William C. Brennan. If you thought Maloney was corrupt, then you probably haven't heard of William Brennan. Mr. Brennan, who was sentenced to 5 years in prison, was given another 5 years on probation and fined $209,000 for taking bribes to fix criminal cases while serving on the state Supreme Court in Queens. Mr. Brennan, who was convicted on December 12, 1986 after a 3-week jury trial, resigned his judgeship the following day, but has steadfastly maintained his innocence. In imposing sentence, Judge Weinstein, the presiding judge, described the then 67-year-old Mr. Brennan as having been casually corrupt and amiably dishonest during his more than 15 years on the bench. During the trial, the prosecutors charged that Justice Brennan had accepted more than $47,000 in bribes in agreeing to aid defendants in 4 cases, including one involving a reputed organized crime figure convicted of attempted murder and another involving a convicted narcotics dealer. Mr. Brennan was convicted under the Federal Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act of 26 counts of racketeering, bribe receiving, interstate travel in aid of racketeering, fraud by interstate telephone, attempted extortion, and conspiracy to engage in a racketeering enterprise. Mr. Brennan, who wore a blue suit, blue shirt, and yellow polka dot tie, sat at the defense table, flanked by his lawyers, his hands clasped in front, his face impassive. His wife, Gloria, sat a few rows back with their children, Matthew and Catherine, tears streaking her face. Mr. Brennan passed up an opportunity to address the court before sentencing. During the trial, he did not take the stand and said he would let his attorneys speak for him. He said the same thing later to reporters when they pressed him for comments. People claimed the punishment given would have been more severe to send a note of warning to other judges. Number 4. William Allen Wiggington. Of all ways to violate the public's trust, William Allen Wiggington chose to do it in the most derogatory manner, stealing the county's funds. The notorious thief in the guise of a judge was sentenced to 5 years in prison for theft and credit card fraud. William had pleaded guilty to 44 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. His crimes included stealing $200 that a local attorney gave Wiggington to buy a suit for a student who could not afford one for the high school mock trial program. William's crimes officially began in March 2019, when he served as treasurer of a Masonic lodge in Jasper. When a secretary notified Wiggington that more than $2,000 was missing from the lodge's bank account, Wiggington said the account must have been hacked. He eventually reimbursed the money he had taken from the lodge with 3 checks drawn from the magistrate court's account. He also forged 3 checks when confronted about what happened in an attempt to cover up what he'd done. In 2020, the court record said the Georgia Bureau of Investigation found that Wiggington used his county credit card to buy Apple products and book hotel rooms for family vacations, such as a trip to Disney World and a cruise. He also used the card to buy Birkenstock sandals, children's toys, and an earwax removal kit. This despicable act leaves you wondering, are these public servants not well paid for their services, or could it be that William just has a fondness for taking properties that are not his? Only William has the answers to this. Unfortunately for him, his days of larceny are over. He was found guilty of 1 count of racketeering, 3 counts of 4th-degree forgery, 5 counts of theft by taking, 39 counts of unauthorized use of a financial transaction card, and 1 count of violation of oath of office. In total, his crimes amounted to 44 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He will serve 5 in custody, followed by the remainder on probation. Number 3. Adriatic Liala. The wrath side of the law has eventually caught up with the former chief prosecutor of Albania, who had been arrested while on the run from authorities in Italy. Lala, who served as Albania's prosecutor general from 2012 to 2017, left the country after the court found him guilty of falsely declaring his assets. He was convicted on October 2017 of hiding money from illegally owned properties and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Liala was originally convicted in May and sentenced by an Albanian court that handles top officials' corruption cases. He had failed to justify how he had financed the purchase of 5.4 acres of land and a new apartment, as well as his family's expenses in the United States and Germany. In October, the Tirana Appeals Court rejected his appeal and upheld the verdict. The 52-year-old also had his property confiscated by judges and is barred from holding any public post for 5 years. Lala resigned from his role as Albania's most senior prosecutor on December 2017. Corruption in senior officials has long plagued Albania's democratic, economic, and social development. Many judges and prosecutors have been dismissed for alleged corruption and illegally acquiring property and money. The case of Liala is yet another indication that the law does not overlook even the ones who wheel the gravel. Number 2. Michael Conahan and Mark Schiavarella. Michael Conahan, a former Luzerne County judge who served as the county's president judge from 2002 to 2006, became famous not for the good works he was appointed to carry out, but for the Kid for Cash scandal, which not only mandated him to pay over $200 million to hundreds of victims, but got him behind bars. The story stretches back to the early 2000s when former Luzerne County judges Mark Schiavarella and Michael Conahan closed a county juvenile detention facility and sent children to a for-profit facility in exchange for millions of dollars in illegal profits. They were charged in 2009 and were later sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Nicknamed the Boss due to his role as president judge, Conahan pulled funding from a county-owned juvenile detention center and agreed to send juveniles to a for-profit facility. Luck ran out for the Boss when he was arrested and brought before the court. He pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy and was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. He was serving that sentence in a Florida facility, but was released to home confinement in 2020 due to the pandemic. He is slated for full release in 2026. Schiavarella was known to have a zero-tolerance policy toward juvenile offenders, according to the Associated Press. He reportedly sentenced children as young as 8 to juvenile detention for small infractions like smoking on school grounds, jaywalking, and truancy. Many were first-time offenders. He was convicted of charges including corruption, racketeering, honest services fraud, and tax fraud in 2011. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison and is serving that sentence in a Kentucky correctional facility. He is expected to be released in 2035. Number 1. Rodolfo Rudy Delgado. The face of corruption had finally been unveiled when the spotlight shone on former district judge Rodolfo Rudy Delgado. Delgado had been free on bond since he was found guilty on July 2008. He was convicted on 8 counts of bribery, conspiracy, Travel Act violations, and obstruction of justice. The Federal Bureau of Investigations was tipped off about Delgado's crimes in 2008. According to a criminal complaint, The information came from a confidential Federal Bureau of Investigation source. They started their investigation at 2016. Delgado was arrested on February 2, 2018, following that 2-year investigation. Later that month, a grand jury decided there was enough evidence in the case to take him to trial just days after the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct suspended him without pay. Delgado's state annual salary at the time was $140,000. In April, he resigned as the judge of the 39 District Court. In November, voters elected him to the 13th Court of Appeals, Place 4. He was later suspended from that seat in July. Shortly after his conviction, Delgado's attorneys filed a motion for a new hearing in the case. The motion was denied by the judge. But this is what led to his detention and jail term. A crooked lawyer named Neo Perez paid the disgraced judge thousands of dollars in bribes to go easy on his clients. The lawyer reportedly slipped the judge cash hidden inside 6 packs of beer and at one point gave him a pickup truck worth $15,000 to establish a line of credit. The cash bribes were as little as $520 and as much as $5,500. The payoff scheme ran from 2008 to 2016. While Delgado was the presiding judge for the 93rd District Court of Texas, which handled criminal and civil cases in Hidalgo County. The sentencing of Delgado sends a strong message to any public official who chooses to serve him or herself rather than their community. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.